Hey Honda Acura fans, this is Marcus from Heel Toe Automotive and welcome to the Heel Toe channel. In this Corner Club episode, we're going to talk about the difference between a JB4 and a Ktuner for your tuning options, especially on an Acura TLX Type S. Now they make the JB4 for a number of different Honda and Acura vehicles, as well as a wide array of European vehicles, and Ktuner is no stranger to the Honda and Acura tuning market. In this video, we're going to compare and contrast the JB4 and the Ktuner V2 unit and help you decide which one might be right for you. Okay, so here we have both units, the JB4 and a Ktuner V2. I don't have a Ktuner version 1.2, but what you should know is that other than the physical hardware shape and what this screen does, they're exactly the same product. They both do the same thing in terms of programming and tuning the car. And so this video does apply to both the V2 and the V1.2 unit. Okay, so let's start with the most obvious difference, that the Ktuner has a screen and the JB4 does not. The one thing I want you to understand is that that screen doesn't actually perform any programming functions for you. You can have different maps within the Ktuner V2 and load them using the screen, but to get them in the screen, a laptop is required. With the JB4, there's no screen, but there is a Bluetooth app that you can use that actually functions somewhat as a screen and allows you to change its built-in maps that way. And I should also mention that while the Ktuner V1.2 doesn't have a screen, both the Ktuner units have Bluetooth capability as well, similar to the JB4, so you can get functionality and visualization of your monitors through an app on Android as well. Don't have an Android, have an Apple. JB4 does support Apple. I should also mention, before I get too much into a deep dive here, that the Ktuner V2 and V1.2, while they will be compatible for the TLX Type S, they aren't currently compatible beyond just data monitoring and data logging. So I actually have used this unit in my TLX Type S a number of times, but really just for data logs and monitoring. No reflash capability as of this recording, but we're expecting that to come out really very soon, and we'll have another video on that when it comes out, so make sure you follow the channel for more on Ktuner support for Type S. Okay, into a little bit more of the nitty-gritty. What's really different about these two units? The JB4 is available now and people have been using it and reporting all kinds of great power gains. How is it doing that? Well, it's a hardware device that actually interfaces with multiple sensors across the engine bay that will basically tell the computer to raise the boost limit and therefore give you more power. Turbocharged engines generate their power from turbo boost, and all you got to do is crank up that boost to get the power. It used to be as easy as putting a manual boost controller or even electronic boost controller if you were that sophisticated. But today, you got to fool the computer, and that's what the JB4 does. There are safe measures inside the JB4 unit that monitor critical engine parameters to make sure that it isn't going into an unsafe place to back off. That's what makes the JB4 safe to use as an everyday device. In a nutshell, the biggest difference between a JB4 unit and a Ktuner unit is that a JB4 is a bolt-on power adder versus a Ktuner, which is a tuning solution for the factory computer. Because the JB4 is a hard installation device, it really is only able to manipulate what the computer does in a way that gives you more power. It's safe and effective, but there are serious limits to what it can do compared to what a Ktuner is capable of doing. A Ktuner rewrites the software on the factory computer to make the car run differently. In contrast to a JB4 that fools the computer into running differently, the Ktuner instructs it to run the way that you want it to, and that's what makes it a real custom tuning solution. All right, so the Ktuner units, both the V2 and the V1.2, are hardware devices. They plug into the computer and into a Windows-based laptop. Don't try using an Apple laptop or an emulator on one of them. That really doesn't work. You're going to need a Windows laptop for using a Ktuner device. Now, this device is basically a glorified dongle that really just allows the factory computer to communicate to your laptop. All the programming and everything happens in the software in the Ktuner application and then gets pushed through this device into the factory computer. And once that's done, this can be removed from the car. The map stays in the computer and goes with you wherever you go. Of course, because the V2 unit has this cool screen, shift lights and whatnot, all kinds of data logging and data monitoring capabilities, a lot of real serious enthusiasts like to keep this in the car as sort of an accessory product to kind of complement their gadgetary desires. The V1.2 is just as good of a unit, is out of sight, it doesn't mount on the dashboard or anything like that, and you could still use Bluetooth capability to use monitoring just like this screen offers. I think the number one thing to take away is we've offered this Ktuner to a number of people buying it with the screen thinking that somehow this screen was going to supersede the need of a laptop, and it is not true. You will need a laptop in order to use a Ktuner in any capacity. When you buy a Ktuner, one of the things you're actually buying is a license to use the software that actually powers the device and does the tuning. You can use the software for free if you download it from the website, but it won't do anything if you don't have the tool. Ultimately, buying the tool gives you license to use the software to do the custom calibrations. But because you're buying a license to use the tool on a specific car, it wants to lock itself to the car's ECU. In other words, the unit marries itself to your car until at such point you want to put it back to stock. So that means that this unit can only be used in one car at a time, even though you could take it out and the effect of the tune will still stay in the car once you do. It's their way of making sure that you don't tune 50 different cars with the same tuner without having, paid for license to get those tunes in those cars. So one of the first things you do with a Ktuner when you get it is register your unit and lock it to your car. This requires an internet connection. And so there actually is a number of steps involved in getting a Ktuner off the ground to begin with. All of that in the interest of being able to make that direct communication between your laptop and the ECU to get that custom tuning just the way you want it to be. Okay, the JB4 unit actually is a hard installation device. We plug it in to factory sensors. We've got the mass airflow sensor, it looks like a manifold pressure sensor, and then one down by the intercooler, which it looks like is possibly an air intake temperature sensor. I'm not sure what it is, but ultimately the JB4 instructions are pretty straightforward on where this goes. They're factory style connections and it just plugs in. Once it's plugged in, then you're going to use the OBD2 extension. So this harness plugs into the JB4 as well, and then you route this over to your OBD connector as well. And so the JB4 will be receiving monitoring data from your computer, which helps it provide a good feedback loop to know exactly how it's going to manipulate the signals of these sensors to effectively raise the boost. Also, the JB4 needs to communicate with some kind of controlling device. I got the JB4 connecting kit, which is for Bluetooth connection to an Android or Apple device. If you don't want to go for this thing, you can also get a data cable that will connect to a Windows-based laptop that you can use to change maps around. But I think pretty much 100% of people would prefer this Bluetooth-capable option. That way you can change the different maps within the JB4 on the fly. There are a couple of different preset calibrations within the JB4 that will give you different basic boost levels and even have ethanol content capability. You can get some great plug-in horsepower with the JB4 unit that's really easy to install and really doesn't require a whole lot of heavy lifting. Because the JB4 is a hard install device and it doesn't actually do anything with manipulating the computer, and you don't actually have to do a whole lot of with the software to get it to work, it can be unplugged and moved to another car without marrying and unmarrying it the way that you have to with the Ktuner. In other words, as I mentioned before, I really consider this a really great bolt-on device. Just like an intake that you can unbolt and sell to your buddy, you could do that with the JB4 as well. Now, not every JB4 is compatible with every other car. The Type S one for the TLX is compatible with an MDX Type S, but if you have a 2-liter Acura like a TLX that's an A-spec model, that'll have its own unit. I think it also works in an Accord, and then they've got one for 1.5-liter Honda Accord and Civic models, and as well one for the Type R. So within a certain window, you can resell this to somebody else and have them use it just the same way that you did without having to worry about this locking to a computer business. The Ktuner does come with a little bit more caveat, as it has to marry to the computer, and if something should happen to your car without you unmarrying it, it becomes an unusable product. You have to unlock it from a vehicle for it to be transferred to another owner. Even though that owner could be anybody else that Ktuner supports, these are not a vehicle-specific product like the JB4 is. Now, the other thing to mention about the Ktuner is that it does come with pre-calibrated maps within as well. That will give you different boost levels, maybe be suitable for a couple of different products that are available on the market to give you good baseline tunes right out of the gate. You can customize those tunes to your liking, but the Ktuner does come with really rather good base maps to begin with. Part of the reason why it's not available right now is because Ktuner is doing extensive testing in all kinds of different environments, different temperatures and weather conditions and driving conditions to make sure that the programming that they're putting onto the factory computer is rock solid. So while it is taking a little extra time to get the Ktuner, we feel like it's going to be a really great option once it does. You absolutely must have a laptop to use it. A lot of people don't have Windows laptops, but you can get them pretty cheap, a couple of $100. It's not that huge of a deal. We've had plenty of customers do that. Or you could just take the Ktuner to a local Ktuner dealer and they can set it up for you, and therefore you wouldn't need a laptop in that situation either. Also on the Ktuner, because you do have to use the software to use it, you have to get acclimated to that software. It does have a bit of a learning curve. It's not the most difficult software in the world to learn, but if you're not a tuner and you're not familiar with how some of these softwares work, you may find yourself a little bit in the weeds in terms of being able to actually use it. And they can be a little finicky to set up. It's very important to have a very strong internet connection when you're first setting up your Ktuner. Otherwise, you're going to be having problems with the batteries dying and things like this as it's trying to find signal to upload. The JB4 unit, while it is simpler and easier to deal with and doesn't require a laptop, you can do it just with your phone. It does come with a couple of caveats as well. First of all, it's a hard installation device, so where you plug the sensors in and route the wires is going to be important that they are safe and not near anything that's hot where they can get melted or damaged, and because if they get damaged, then the unit will stop working. Also, you've got to find a place to mount this. It's got to go under the hood somewhere, and there's plenty of space down here, but it does add to a little bit more of a clunky installation, not as clean as just rewriting the factory computer. Also, you do need to route the OBD cable into the interior of the car. Now that's a pretty simple thing to do if you just pass it through the fender and through the doorway. So the installation is definitely not hard, but it does come with the extra caveat of needing to put this hardware somewhere. Something else about the JB4 that I haven't talked about yet that does get a little bit of a cut against it is that people who are somewhat, and I'll call them Ktuner elitists, just because they know that the product is very good and it works very well, is that this is only a piggyback unit. And because of that, there are downstream repercussions to how the car may react to that over the long term. And we haven't seen any issues that people have reported with the way the car shifts or anything like that. But because of the way the computer in this car works, it's trying to reach specific torque limits, and those torque limits are used to calibrate how the transmission is going to react to your throttle inputs, the power that it's making, upshifts, downshifts, and with the way that the computer in this car controls the transmission, it is important to think about how changing the torque limit values and changing the torque actual inputs will impact the long-term viability of the hardware in the car, such as the transmission and how that works. Definitely not saying that the JB4 is going to cause problems with your transmission, but it is something to think about. One of the things you got to think about when you're putting a part like this in your car is, what is it actually doing, and is that going to suit my use case? You want to do some highway pulls, some roll races with your buddies. This is going to get you great power to, probably have an edge. For high performance driving situation like racing, competition driving, track days, time trials, there you might want something that's a little bit more of a holistic approach to recalibrating the computer. Okay, so there we have the JB4 and the Ktuner V2 and its little cousin, the Ktuner V1.2. If you're just into making power, want to bolt something on, think you might not have the car that long, throw on a little bit of extra ponies with this JB4 nice and easy and beat your buddies. If you're having a lot more need for competition tuning, upgrading the turbo, adding much more power, the Ktuner is going to be your buddy for all kinds of custom things you might want to do to the engine, such as recalibrating the fuel system, putting a bigger turbocharger, or all kinds of other sky's the limit sort of things. Ktuner is your answer for complete tuning. Hopefully it comes out really very soon. And we'll definitely post a video when it does. Make sure you're watching our channel and subscribe for more. Have a great day.